All right, welcome to class. It is Friday, August, actually 16th, not 18th, but sorry I'm out today. I hope you have a great day, but here's what you guys need. You need to make sure that you have submitted assignment 1, which was your Who Am I video, assignment 2, which was your diagnostic, which was actually I moved the due date to today. So basically, the main thing is just get it done. Yesterday, you guys had assignment 3, or 2 days ago, leading the way. And then yesterday, you had the scientist worksheet, assignment 4. I'm giving you a break as it is the first week of school. So if you are missing any of those items, make sure that you get any of these items in this weekend and get them up to date. Tonight, you're going to have, or today, you're going to have a big ideas assignment. We'll explain how to do that in this video. You need to get your notes packets out, your yellow notes packets, and we are going to begin on page 3 in just a moment. I will go through, so once again, you need to make sure you submit your IXL diagnostic, as well as the other assignments. You're going to want to check Canvas and make sure that you've submitted those. Yesterday, you were changing decimals to fractions, so herpetologists are, they study reptiles apparently. So if you had that, you had the correct answer. Tomorrow, or I'll go back over this on Monday, but you should have had this assignment done and submitted for me today. This was assignment number 4. We'll talk about this on Monday and see if you guys have any questions on that. On the back, we were thinking about the cowboy method from 2 days ago, where the top number will fall inside. There's 2 ways of doing each one of these. You can notice that if there is a whole number like these last 2, then we should have a whole number in our answer. And so we'll talk about those. You had 2 problems that were repeating decimals and 1 question that was a terminating, two questions that were terminating decimals. So we will talk once again about those on Monday. If you have any questions, I'll review those with you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and turn to page 4 in your packet. Well, actually, it would be page 3. I apologize. Page 3 in your packet, and we're going to begin taking notes. If I go too fast, you are welcome to pause the video and slow down. You may also go to Canvas and watch the video. I will also have a completed copy of notes on Canvas for you to look at and complete the notes if you need to. So once again, if I go too fast, go ahead and pause. Now, you need to go ahead and write some definitions. Now, these are your notes, so if you need to abbreviate something, you may abbreviate. So the first one are whole numbers, and whole numbers are the set of numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Main idea is that there is no fraction or decimal part. It is a whole. So if we're looking at our number line, what I would like you to do is you guys see this number line. I want you to start labeling. So we'd start here at 0, and we'll put 0 in the middle, and then to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So somewhere about there. And then we're going to label these as our whole numbers. These are the ones that have no fractions, no decimals. Those are our whole numbers. The new term that many of you may not have known is integers. So our next one are the integers, which are the set of all of the whole numbers. So it's all of these whole numbers that we just talked about above and their opposites. So the opposite of 5 would be -5, the opposite of 1. So if we complete our table, and once again, if I go too fast, you guys can fill in or you can pause, but the opposite of 1 would be -1. The opposite of 2 would be -2. The opposite of 3 would be -3. Opposite of 4 would be -4, and the opposite of 5 would be -5. And so these are your integers, but also all of those, sorry, we can't write very well with this. So integers. So these are all of our integers on the right, as well as the whole numbers on the left. Those make up the integers. We'll end up using a diagram to show these later in the year. Rational numbers, on the other hand, are anything that can be written. An easy way of saying it is anything that can be written as a, and I just like to put anything that can be written as a fraction. So, all right, and you don't need to necessarily fill it out, but it's basically the denominator can't be 0 because that's impossible to have a denominator of 0. But the rationals would be all of the numbers that you see on this number line. and that would be every point in between as well as the whole numbers. So every single little point. So if I did, 5 1/2, that would be a rational number. Wouldn't be a whole number because you have a half. Okay? If I had negative 3.3 or negative 3 3/10, as we say it correctly, that would be a rational number. It wouldn't be an integer because it has a 0.3 behind it. All right, so we're going to move on. So you got to get some vocab down. We're now going to just talk some basics. This is not difficult. This is not a real difficult idea. It's just starting to get the idea of what a rational number is. And so first, we're going to ask which is greater. And so if we use this number line to kind of help us, 3 or negative 5. So if I look at that number line, here's 3 and here's negative 5. Now, the numbers that are greater on the right, anything to the right, it's more in value. Anything to the left is less. So as you look at the number line, so 3 is right, and obviously we all know that a positive is greater than a negative. Now, which is further from 0? So if we were to kind of highlight 0 here, here's 0, and if we look, negative 5 is 5 away from 0, while 3 is only 3 away from 0, so negative 5. And that's going to come to what we're getting at in our next vocab word in a moment. Now, the next one kind of throws some of you off a little bit more because we have fractional parts. These are our rationals, and so we have negative 3/4. Now, what you need to notice, and I'm going to kind of zoom in on this real quick. So negative 3/4, if we kind of think about this, this is a fraction, and if we were to kind of write it as a whole number, it'd be, okay, we don't ever write that 0 in front, but what that tells me is this is going to be between, if we're looking at the number line, it's going to be between 0 and negative 1 here. And so that would be somewhere about there, okay? Whereas this one starts with negative 1, which means it's going to be between negative 1 and negative 2. And so negative 1.5 would be to the left of negative 3/4. So which is greater would be the negative 3/4 because it's closer to the positives. And when we are dealing with two negative numbers, what I like to think of it as less is more. So if you're closer to, if the number's smaller, when you have two negatives, less is more. Now, in this case, which is further from that green 0, well, that would be negative 1.5. So negative 1.5 is further from 0. All right, and then we get to this last one, and we take a look, and we have negative 6 3/10. I like you to get used to kind of graphing it and just be thinking, if this starts with a negative 6, it would have to be between negative 6 and negative 7. It'd be somewhere over here, way to the left, whereas this one starts with a 0. It's also positive, and so it's going to be between 0 and 1, so it's going to be somewhere closer to the right. And we should know that positives are always greater than a negative, so 7/10 is greater. However, which is further? Well, from 0, well, that would be negative 6 3/10. All right, so as we flip over real quick, we're going to learn basically the big important term, and that term is absolute value. So turn to page 4, and at the top, you need to fill in your vocab word. This is the key word for the day, all right? And so absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. This symbol right here, these two straight bars mean absolute value. The way we like to think of it is it positivizes the number, okay? Absolute value positivizes the number, all right? So it is not saying the opposite of, it is saying the distance a number is away from 0, and we can never have a negative distance from 0. So in this case, if I'm looking at, all right, 6, this is saying we would read this as the absolute value of 6. That's how we would read it. Now, if we look at 6, 6 is here, up here on that number line, and it is 6 away from 0. As we look at the next one, this is saying the absolute value of negative 3. Well, negative 3 is here, and negative 3 is 3 away from 0. Okay, now this is the one that will throw some of you, and what you need to make sure of, it's kind of thinking of parentheses. Inside the parentheses we have, now this is inside the absolute value bar, we have 8 and 5/10. But on the outside, we have this negative. And so we're actually not going to say negative of the absolute value. We're going to start getting in the habit of saying the opposite of. And so this is saying the opposite of the absolute value of 8.5. Well, the absolute value of 8.5. So if I go here, think of, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, you got to do what's inside first. The absolute value of 8.5 would be 8.5, but the opposite of that would be negative. Another way of thinking of it is that negative was on the outside. You're going to end up bringing it down. Now, on the other hand, we look at this next one. Our negative is back on the inside, and so we're going to say the absolute value of negative 4/5. Well, negative 4/5 would be almost negative 1. It's going to be between 0 and 1, and so it's just going to be positive 4/5. It's a super easy concept. When you see those two straight bars, it's just going to positivize the number. All right, as we move on to the next ones. So now we're comparing. So real quick, we want to write it out. It takes a second. So the absolute value of 8 is 8. The absolute value of negative 10 is 10, and 10 is greater than the 8, so the alligator is going to eat the absolute value of negative 10. And we would read that as the absolute value of 8 is less than the absolute value of 10, negative 10. Now notice on this one, as we look at this next example, once again on this one, the negative is on the outside. So this one is saying the opposite of 6 and 3/10. Well, 6 and 3/10, absolute value of 6 and 3/10 is 6 and 3/10, and the opposite of it is negative. Okay, the absolute value wasn't negative, but because the negative was on the outside, we bring that negative down. This side's saying the absolute value of negative 6 and 3/10 because the negative's on the inside, and that's going to be positive 6 and 3/10. So this is not going to be equal, and negatives are always smaller than positives. And then as we look at this last one, the absolute value of negative 2.5, well, that negative's on the inside, so it's going to become positive. And this one is the absolute value of 1 and 7/8. And so in this case, positive 2 is always going to be greater than positive 1. All right. So when you compare, I would encourage you to write it out real quick. All right, this last example, very quickly, we're going to kind of try to kind of use this number line to kind of help us as we kind of go through. And it says, you got a picture of what it's kind of saying. It says the moon has an ocean underneath its icy surface. Scientists run tests above and below the surface. The table shows the elevations of each test. Which test is the deepest? Which test is closest to the surface? And so if we're kind of thinking of this, if we put the surface here, okay, negative something would be down below. So if I were to change this to say negative, so this first one is negative 3. So as we look, well, if I'm going to, we could kind of turn this one. So here's our 0. That would be the surface of the moon. And negative 3 and 8/10 would be somewhere over here. So negative 3 and 8/10 would be somewhere over here. Negative 5 and 1/15 would be somewhere in here. Okay, it doesn't have to be exact, but it gives us an idea. 0.3 would be positive, and that's going to be between 0 and 1. And so it's going to be somewhere up here. We have negative 4 and 5/10. Well, that's going to be between the, so I'm going to have to zoom in here to kind of write that one in there. But negative 4 and 5/10 is going to be somewhere in between here. And then finally we had negative 25/100. Well, that's going to be between 0 and 1, and that's going to be approximately, we just say somewhere around here. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky at the very end. Whoops, that's 0.25. And so which is the deepest? Well, that would be below the surface. The deepest one would be this one. And so it'd be kind of like thinking of the absolute value. So the negative 5 and 15/100, which would be the salinity, apparently. And closest to the surface, well, if the surface is right here at 0, then what we need to do, and what I would do is when I'm comparing two decimals, this is going to become, we're going to put it, that was 0.3 then, and if we think of that absolute value, that's 0.25. If we want to compare, I'd add a 0 behind it, and that makes it 30. So what's going to be closer is 25 is going to be closer to the surface than 30, and so in this case, the ice layer would be closest to the surface. All right, so that is a quick version of what we're doing. And, so we're supposed to put these in order from least to greatest, I apologize. So we can kind of use that number line again. What I like to do is I like to go through and write each and every one of them. So this is 17. This is still -3. This is the opposite of the absolute value of 6. Well, the absolute value of 6 is 6, and then the opposite of it would be -6. So we have that, and then we have 1/3, which is just 1/3. Nothing's changing on that one, and this one becomes -1. The negative becomes a positive, and so we can get rid of that negative because it's the absolute value. Now, negatives are always smaller than positives, and the bigger the negative, the smaller the value. So the smallest number would be the absolute value of, or the opposite of the absolute value of 6. Then we have -3. And then, so these two are taken care of. And now we need to, and we want to write them in their original form. This one has a whole number. This one is a whole number, and the 1/3 doesn't have a whole number. So the smallest would be the one without the whole number because it would be right about there. And then 1.6 is going to be past that. And then 17, if we were using the number line, would be somewhere way out here. And so 17 would be there. Okay, now I messed up because once again, 1.6 is not a piece of the data. So I need to erase that. And I need to write it the way it was written to start with. So I'm going to put the absolute value of -1 6/10. And so when you're doing it, comparing it from least to greatest, you do need to write them in their original form. Okay, so our assignment in a moment is going to go to big ideas. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Canvas with me, okay? And I'm going to show you how to get to big ideas. Your job is to get a 70% or better. On this assignment, you do not need to show work. There will be a check button that you can check your answers, and I have given you unlimited checks, so you should have no problem getting a 70% or better. Now, when you finish it, you need to submit a screenshot of your score, and your screenshot, in a moment, what I'll show you, it needs to have your name in it. So there's a couple of options. After you finish, you're going to get a results that look something like this. Your name will be up here. You might need to click on submitted. So if you click on assignments, if you go and use that these 3 little dots or lines, okay, the hamburger, then click on assignments, it might actually be submitted if you've actually submitted it. And now I can see your name. I can see the name, the title, and your score. Don't crop it, just leave it exactly like this and submit it. Or some of you will see it this way. And once again, I would see your name here. I will see the title here, and then I get to see your score right here. So make sure your name's in it. Now, how do we get to big ideas? You are going to go to your Canvas page. Once you go to Canvas, mine's going to be different because I'm a teacher. I'm going to click out here to underneath your home button, and you're going to click on Big Ideas. Okay, on the left-hand side, it's going to be a link right above Clever. And when you go there, it will have probably, you can see mine says Current Assignments. So you would click on that. If you can't find, it'll say A number 5. If you can't find it, then it might be you have to click on the 3 little hamburgers over here, and then you're going to click on assignments and you'll find it. So you can see that when I click on it on my teacher end, I see it this way. So it'll say A number 5, lesson 1-1, but it's not there yet, and I'm in teacher mode. You guys are in student mode. So once again, when you finish the assignment, your job is to screenshot your score, use your check button, and I should see something like this submitted to Canvas. I hope you have a great weekend. Once again, if you did not finish an assignment, your job is to get it done this weekend. I will not count it late. And if you have any questions, feel free to be prepared to ask me on Monday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Have a good one.